Hey, what's going on guys, this is AndrewChicken and welcome back to another video. With 3 of the 4 classes out of the way, it's time to move on to the final class, Tanks. The frontline class is very powerful, boasting champions with incredibly high health pools and the ability to defend an area or push through enemy defenses extremely effectively. Tanks can be divided into 2 subclasses, main and off tanks. Main tanks are primarily concerned with defending their team and holding an area, usually the objective or nether key choke point, while off tanks are better at pushing alongside their DPS and flanks to secure kills and breach enemy defenses. Today, we'll be discussing the top 5 main tanks in Paladins, and then next week I'll release a video going over the top 5 best off tanks in Paladins. Now before we get started, I need to go over a few disclaimers. First, this list is from a keyboard and mouse perspective. The meta in this game is different depending on your input type, as controller players favor fast-firing hit scans due to their aim assist, while keyboard and mouse players have an easier time squeezing every ounce of value out of projectile champions. While I doubt this list will exchange from a controller perspective, I still want to put this disclaimer here just in case. Also, it's very important for me to iterate that this list is just my opinion. You shouldn't take it as gospel, and if your opinion differs, that is absolutely fine. Many tanks can have decent main tank playstyles if you take the time to master them, so if you find someone who is not on this list to be fun and powerful, that's fantastic. Make sure to let me know who you think are the strongest main tanks in the comment section down below. Just don't forget to keep the discussion respectful. But if this is just my opinion, then why does my opinion matter? Well, I'm a seasoned veteran at this game with far too many hours, and I've reached Masters in 3 separate seasons. I've seen just about everything this game has to offer, and my abundance of experience has guided the placements on this list. I'm not a perfect player, but I think it's safe to say I know a thing or two about this game. And finally, if you're watching this in the future, this list may be outdated. This list is from Season 5, or 2022. If you're in a different season or a different year, then take these placements with a grain of salt. This is reflective of the meta at the time of writing, not necessarily of the meta in the future. But with all those hefty disclaimers out of the way, let's go ahead and get straight into the video. Number 5, Azan. Alright, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. There aren't actually 5-point tanks in Paladins. Whoa, hold on. Before you click off the video, let me explain. Most of the tanks in this game primarily serve as an off tank, but some of them have options to fill the role of main tank decently well too. While they're way better as the off tank, they're not horrible at solo or main tanking. That's exactly the case with Azan. Now, if this video came out at the start of the year, Azan would be number 1 in both lists, no questions asked. However, he's been toned down dramatically since his overpowered inception, and is now in a very well balanced state. He's beefy, has amazing crowd control, good survivability, and is one of the only tanks with vertical mobility, boasting the best dash in the tank class. Azan's kit serves him well for whatever role he needs to fill. He can do pretty much whatever he wants due to the nature of how his abilities work and combo together. First, let's talk about his primary fire. Azan can put out consistent damage with his Judgment, which is a thrown hammer that never has to reload. It can also provide good self-sustain with the talent Persistence, but where it really shines is with his passive Ire. You see, with every hammer Azan hits, he generates a percentage of Ire, which grants him up to 12% damage reduction and also augments his abilities when above the 85% Ire threshold. This is an extremely powerful passive to have, as no other tank has passive damage reduction with the same level of mobility as Azan has. Yagharoth has greater damage reduction, but is stationary, and Inara has greater damage reduction, but it's on a cooldown. Azan can maintain his damage reduction indefinitely as long as he's hitting shots, or just getting hit by the enemies. That's right, he can also generate Ire just by getting hit. I still don't like this part of the passive, but I can't deny that it's incredibly strong and provides a major boost to the sustainability of his Ire. Azan's crowd control is also some of the most powerful in the tank class. If he needs to hit someone behind cover or stop them from running away, he can use Reckoning to knock them up in the air and cancel their movement abilities. This ability completely ignores cover, allowing him to hit behind barriers and even walls. It also has a significantly lower cooldown when used above 85% Ire, making this ability very spammable. Reckoning alone is one of the best crowd control abilities in the tank class, but Azan's movement ability also doubles as a stun. It's not just good for reaching any high ground in the game, oh no. This bad boy also picks up the first enemy Azan touches, and if he slams into a wall, he stuns that enemy. Picking up an enemy also cancels whatever channeled skill they were using, even if he doesn't hit a wall, which is really useful. And above 85% Ire, this ability travels faster, allowing him to travel farther and have an easier time picking up a target. But what if Azan wants to stun somebody, but there is no wall? Well, Azan can just build his own walls. Sanctuary is a skill that summons 5 wall segments in a semicircle around where he casts it, providing some excellent protection from a variety of attacks. The walls gain increased health when used above 85% ire, giving him even more protection from incoming damage. And if Azan stuns an enemy on his own wall, the stun actually lasts for a longer amount of time, giving his abilities some excellent synergy. And of course, we can't forget his ultimate. Deliverance thrusts Azan high up into the sky, where he can target anywhere on the ground that's in line of sight to throw his hammer down, dealing a large amount of damage knocking enemies back before he follows it down and lands like the absolute badass he is. This ultimate is one of the best engagement tools in the frontline class, since it allows him to reposition incredibly quickly and force his way through any choke point. While it's bad in tight spaces, it's an absolute powerhouse when used in the open. It's a seriously great ultimate to round off his kit. As you can see, Azan is a very powerful champion overall. He's basically a jack-of-all-trades character, since his kit allows him to thrive in whatever situation he's thrust in. When he's let loose and allowed to push into the enemies while a second tank controls the objective, he's an absolutely dominant beast. However, that same power can allow him to hold the point too, if need be. Azan can also take his shirt off, which allows him to seduce the enemies into letting him win. All of his different strengths combine to make him one of the best tanks in Paladins, and so he earns the number 5 spot on this list. Number 4. Makoa. In the number 4 spot we have Makoa, the tank with one of the most powerful shields in the game. Makoa is a powerful off-tank like Azan, but he's got one of the best main tank builds out of the bunch with his talent Half Shell, which allows him to place down his big dome shield and continue shooting or doing whatever he wants instead of channeling it, just like Barrack would with his Barricade. However, Makoa's shield is much more like Barrack's ultimate than his basic shield. Shell Shield blocks damage from all angles, making it one of the best protective abilities in the game. While enemies can still just walk inside the shield and start shooting, this can be dangerous, as Makoa also boasts one of the scariest close-range damage combos in the frontline class. Makoa has a combo that goes as follows: shoot, hook, shoot, shell spin, shoot. This combo can deal 2,325 damage if executed properly, which is a lethal amount of damage for most squishy champions to take. Even if Makoa doesn't kill the target, just hooking them near him can be enough for an attentive teammate to clean up a kill. As long as Makoa's teammates are competent and Makoa's positioning is good, every hook has potential to be a kill. Thankfully for all of Makoa's foes, it has a very long cooldown and a relatively short range. While it's dangerous to go inside of Makoa's shield, it is possible to destroy it very quickly. It has 4,000 health, so just a little bit of wrecker on any damage champion will make short work of it. However, Makoa has a plan to punish anyone who shoots his shield with the card Barrier Wreath. This card reduces the cooldown of the shield by 1 second for every 800 damage it takes, so the card can potentially reduce the cooldown by 5 seconds if the shield gets completely destroyed. Makoa can also squeeze an extra second of cooldown reduction out of the card by running it in tandem with Carapace at level 4 to add an extra 800 health to the shield. With Chronos 3, his shield has just a 4-second cooldown when completely destroyed, making it incredibly spammable. This puts the enemies in a bind. If they shoot the shield to destroy it, they make Makoa vulnerable for a few seconds, but the shield comes back faster. If they don't destroy the shield, then the shield will have a 10-second cooldown at best, giving them a much longer period of opportunity to kill Makoa. However, for the 4 seconds that the shield is up, he's effectively unkillable. And of course, the duration can be increased even further with a card. Either way, Makoa's shield is an uncomfortable ability for the enemy team to play around. And of course, Makoa's ultimate is one of the first things that comes to mind when you think about Paladins. "You challenge Makoa?" is a phrase as old as the game itself, and still to this day something that's not easy to do. Makoa's ultimate grants him crowd control immunity and increased damage per second, although it confines his damage to a melee attack. The cherry on top, however, is the uncauterized 8,500 health it gives him. If he gets low, he can pop his ultimate to instantly restore all of his health and then some, making it useful for extending a fight. Sometimes, the only thing the ultimate is used for is the full heal, and then it's immediately cancelled so he can go back to shooting and shielding. But even that is a powerful ability to have, no doubt. Makoa is a powerful tank with his burst combo, amazing shield, and phenomenal ultimate. However, he isn't without his flaws. In particular, one giant flaw: his head. Makoa has the easiest head hitbox to hit in the game by a mile. It's huge, and it's positioned at about chest height for most hit-scan champions, which means when they aim for regular body shots, they have a very high chance of hitting his head. Makoa is extremely vulnerable to hit scans from all classes. Because of this, champions who can outrange him such as Sati, or champions who can survive him such as Rom, are at a significant advantage. Otherwise, Makoa is a fantastic tank who can main tank far better than most other off-tanks can. Because of this, he achieves the highest ranking of the tanks who are not the generally accepted official main tanks, but rather off tanks with a main tank playstyle. Number 3. Inara. In the number 3 spot we have the lowest ranking official main tank, Inara. Inara is all about defending an area and trapping her enemies. Like Azan, she is capable of erecting walls and stacking up impressive damage reduction, but she trades off mobility for extra defensive capabilities. But just how defensive can she be? Well, one of Inara's most powerful abilities is her Earthen Guard, which gives her an impressive 30% damage reduction and 40% increased healing received. When paired with a good support like the ones I covered in my top 5 main supports list, Inara is extremely hard to kill when using this ability. And the increased healing stacks with Rejuvenate, allowing her to cut late game Cauterize in half. Earthen Guard can also provide Inara a further 10% damage reduction and total crowd control immunity with Mother's Grace, which is a powerful talent that makes Inara one of the only tanks who can deny crowd control with a regular ability. With how common crowd control is these days, Mother's Grace is an excellent tool for Inara to have. Her next 2 abilities serve as both defensive and trapping tools. Inara can construct a large stone wall that is capable of completely zoning off many of the tight hallways and areas in the game. It has 5,000 health and is also affected by the damage reduction granted by Earthen Guard. Because of its size, it's great for trapping enemies between a rock and, well, a rock. No, not that rock. That rock. Inara's Warder's Field is the other tool she uses to defend herself and trap the enemies. Warder's Field is a deployable that smashes the earth beneath it, slowing any enemies within its radius. It can make it difficult for nearby enemies to escape Inara, especially with the talent Treacherous Ground. Treacherous Ground has the powerful ability to cripple anyone who stands in Warder's Field, and it also increases its radius by 50%. This is a devastating ability that makes the enemies very uncomfortable until they buy enough Bulldozer or Resilience to escape the field, and it is especially helpful when dueling other tanks who depend on their movement abilities to survive, such as Atlas or Ashe. Warder's Field has one more useful trick up its sleeve though. You see, with the card Sacred Ground, Inara can gain up to 25% damage reduction while standing inside of Warder's Field, which is almost as much damage reduction as Earthen Guard. By cycling the 2 abilities, Inara can have some seriously good uptime on her damage reduction, or she can stack the abilities to become extremely beefy for a limited time. Inara's ultimate is also pretty good. It makes her crowd control immune while she winds up to throw her spear, which deals 500 damage and stuns enemies for 2 seconds in a large radius. It also pierces through shields, making it a useful tool for dealing with champions like Fernando. Overall, it's a solid ult that can be used in combination with more powerful ultimates such as Ceres's or Bomb King's. While Inara is a great defensive tank, there are a few things keeping her back from ranking higher than the other true point tanks. For starters, she is very slow. She has no movement ability by default, and has to use a card to turn her wall into a less flexible version of Buck's Leap. She slows herself when she shoots, and it's overall just very difficult for her to push a team or retreat from a tight situation. Her damage also isn't nearly as impressive as some of the other champions in the tank class. While stacking the damage from Warder's Field with her primary fire is certainly respectable, it's nothing compared to what some off-tanks can pull off, and the previous champions we've discussed all have more powerful burst combos. Still, Inara is extremely beefy and extremely deadly when she uses her traps well. She's one of the best when it comes to defending an area and holding the point, and when she's used in conjunction with an off-tank, great things tend to happen. So, Inara earns the number 3 spot on this list. Number 2. Fernando. In the number 2 spot we have the second sexiest champion in the tank class, Fernando. Fernando is the only true point tank who can also be played as an off-tank, kind of like the inverse of almost every true off-tank in the game. Fernando has an easy, flexible, and powerful kit that allows him to be a great asset for most teams. Fernando is by far the easiest tank on this list. He requires the least amount of aim, has the most forgiving shield, and the easiest movement ability to use. His flamethrower is almost impossible to miss with and pierces through targets, making it a great close quarters weapon that is one of the best for applying Cauterize in the game. Because of its ease of use and area damage capabilities, it has the second lowest DPS out of any weapon in the game, clocking in at just 450 damage per second. However, it has the unique feature of being the only weapon in the frontline class and one of the only weapons in the entire game that has a damage over time effect, allowing Fernando to have a pseudo reveal on targets that run out of his range. This reveal, on top of the massive hitbox that the flamethrower has, makes him the premier tank for countering stealth champions. Fernando does have some burst options with his Fireball and Dash, however. Fireball deals 450 damage to whoever it passes through and has significantly longer range than his Flamethrower, making it a good option for hitting targets who are far away or putting additional damage into whoever he's fighting. He can also do a further 400 damage with his charge, and together the two abilities are capable of almost doing 1,000 damage very quickly. The bread and butter of Fernando's kit is his shield, which is one of the best defensive abilities in the game. By default, he deploys a shield with 5,200 health for 8 seconds, and it has a 12-second cooldown. It's channeled, so he can't really shoot while using it, but he can turn it to face any lateral direction. However, what makes this ability really good is the talent Aegis, which makes the shield a toggleable ability that uses a resource meter instead of a cooldown. The resource meter recharges when the shield is active, and recharges more quickly when the shield is put away. This makes the shield infinitely more flexible because it allows Fernando to activate it whenever he needs to, giving him the ability to attack or defend incredibly effectively. Fernando also has one of the most powerful ultimates in the game. He can make everyone in a large radius around him immortal for 4 seconds, and he also makes himself crowd control immune. Basically, he prevents anyone near him from dropping below 1500 health, although he doesn't heal them if they were already below that threshold. This ultimate is powerful for obvious reasons. It counters every single damage and crowd control ability in the game. There's not much more to say about it, other than it's superb. Fernando is a super simple and super powerful tank. There's nothing really bad to say about him. While he has limited range, his damage is extremely reliable. His defensive abilities are incredible and his ultimate is crazy good. He's the easiest tank in the game and almost everyone can pick him up and do well with him. So he earns the number 2 spot on this list. Number 1. Barrack. In the number 1 spot we have the champion who still doesn't have a skin wearing Leon's dress for some reason, Barrack. Barrack is the pinnacle of what it means to be a point tank, boasting some of the best zone defense abilities in the game. Like Fernando, he's also really easy to play, which makes him super dependable. Now, Barrack might not seem like the best tank at first, since he has the smallest health pool out of all the frontline champions. However, he uses a combination of his abilities and small stature to block fire and survive in even the toughest of circumstances. Barrack's main ability to block damage is his Barricade, which is a huge shield that blocks up to 4,000 damage for 6 seconds. With his most popular talent Fortify, he can increase the health to 6,000 and reduce the cooldown drastically, making this a reliable tool for defending any zone. However, Barrack can also draw further fire from the enemies with his turrets, which provides some great utility for Barrack. Barrack can have up to 2 turrets out at any given time, and by default they can block up to 1,000 health each. They deal 120 damage per second, which is not a lot. However, when both of his turrets are shooting at the same person he's shooting at, they can provide a significant boost to his DPS. And with the card Healing Station, Barrack can also heal himself when he's near his turrets. Healing Station provides up to 125 healing per second, which is almost as much as a Genos Mark. Unfortunately, the card doesn't stack on itself, so 2 turrets together won't provide double the healing. Still, this is a very dependable self-sustain for Barrack to have. That isn't where the utility of his turrets ends, however. You see, Barrack can also use his turrets for cooldown reduction with the very useful card One Man's Scrap. This card can grant up to 25% cooldown reduction to all of his abilities per turret destroyed, including the turret itself. Barrack's turrets tend to attract a lot of fire, and this card makes it so that even when they're destroyed, they're still useful. This card gives him a lot more uptime on his shield, turrets, and movement ability, greatly increasing his power. And of course, while the turrets are taking fire from the enemies, that means they're drawing fire away from Barrack. In fact, because Barrack is so small, he can even use the turrets for body blocking. The turrets are small, but so is Barrack. So while other tanks like Fernando wouldn't really be able to use the turrets for this purpose, Barrack can. Barrack's hitbox is highly advantageous for more than just hiding behind his turrets, however. Since he's so short, he can also use the payload as a really effective way of blocking damage. Barrack can hide behind the payload and use it as a shield far better than almost any other champion in the game. With some clever positioning and juking, this can make Barrack incredibly hard to kill. However, unlike Inara, Barrack isn't trapped in whichever area he decides to set up his turrets and shield in. If he's pinned down, he can use his rocket boots to escape, which is basically an alternate version of the many dashes we have in the frontline class that has way better handling, allowing him to make tight turns with ease. And with the card Fuel Efficiency, he can drastically increase the duration of his rocket boots, which gives him some serious lateral mobility. If Barrack really needs to hunker down, however, his ultimate is the perfect tool for the job. You know how I talked about how good Makoa's Shell Shield was earlier for being able to block damage from all directions? Well, Barrack's Dome Shield does that, but even better. This shield has 10,000 health, making it more than twice as tanky as Makoa's ability. It's also equally as deadly to step inside, since it has a powerful flamethrower turret guarding the center. This turret deals a menacing 600 damage per second, which, when combined with his other turrets and his blunderbuss, can cause Barrack to deal a whopping 1,340 damage per second. Just be careful around Rom, because Rom's Cataclysm can completely destroy Barrick's entire setup. However, if Barrick wants to increase the potency of his damage, he can always just take to his other two talents. Tinkerin increases the base damage of his blunderbuss to 550 and greatly increases the range, letting him be a greater threat on long maps like Timbermill. If you'd prefer to use his flamethrower more often, because it's really cool, then Forge Fire is your best bet. This talent lets him deploy 2 additional flamethrower turrets alongside his regular turrets, which have all the same benefits as discussed previously. However, he does lose the power of his big dome shield, so he won't be able to block damage as effectively. Barrick is easily one of the best tanks in the game due to his strong defensive skills, impressive damage output, and high survivability. It takes a lot to put this little guy down, and he has easily proven himself to be one of the most dependable point tanks in Paladins. He's also really easy to pick up, making him accessible to almost every player. Because of all this, Barrick earns the #1 spot on this list. But with that being said, that's going to be the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe learned a thing or two about the characters we discussed. Do you agree with my placements, or do you think someone else should take the #1 spot? Please let me know in the comment section down below, and while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this from me. Also, if you want to find players to party up with, consider joining my Discord server linked in the description, and you can also find me streaming on Twitch, which is linked in the same place. Lastly, if you want to support me and this channel, then consider making your next crystal purchase at nexus.gg/AndrewChicken. There, you can buy crystals, the season pass, and more, and support me in the process. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.